If I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here.
Tupac wasn't the type to bow down, not to the industry, and definitely not to the streets. But that defiance put him right in the crosshairs of the Southside Crips. On one fateful day, they tried forcing him to check in, and what unfolded would ignite one of the deadliest feuds in hip-hop history. Let me break it down. When real recognizes real. Yo, September 7th, 1996. Tupac Amaru Shakur was rolling into Las Vegas, streets buzzing and eyes on him. Pac wasn't just a rapper that night, he was a target in the middle of a web of money, power, and beef. The hotels, the players, the politics, it all collided, and he was about to feel it firsthand just because he wouldn't check in. The checking in practice refers to a long-standing informal code in hip-hop and gang culture where visiting rappers or celebrities are expected to notify or show respect to local gangs or influential figures when they step foot in territories that wasn't theirs. See, the whole system was built on respect, territory, and understanding that certain blocks belonged to certain sets. You couldn't just roll through flashing your ice and throwing your weight around without acknowledging the real power structure that controlled them corners. For cats who didn't understand this game, the consequences could be fatal. Now, before we get into what really went down with Pac, we gotta talk about the man who would eventually be sitting across from detectives confessing to orchestrating one of hip-hop's greatest tragedies.
Am I right? And how is I'm controversial?
You're pretty controversial.
That voice belongs to Dwayne Keef D Davis, and that question, how's I'm controversial, is about to get answered in the most serious way possible. This OG from the Southside Compton Crips was about to spill the tea that would shake the culture to its foundation and finally put some truth to all the conspiracy theories that had been floating around for decades. Keef D wasn't just some wannabe trying to get clout off Pac's name. He was described as a major force and leader within the Southside Compton Crips by the early 1990s, orchestrating drug trafficking operations and involved in violent retaliations. This cat was really in the field, moving serious weight and commanding respect in Compton when most rappers was still trying to figure out which gang to claim for their street cred. The hood that produced both Pac's enemies and his legend wasn't always the battlefield it became.
It was all white. All our neighbors was white. Moved out there in 1965. And yeah, mostly our neighbors was white. Then the blacks started coming in like 1969, 70, 71.
As blacks moved in, whites engaged in white flight, moving to suburbs and other areas, leaving behind communities that would become battlegrounds for territory, respect, and survival. By the mid-70s, the streets had transformed completely.
I had my first run-in with some gang violence in like 75, 76.
At just 9 years old, Keef D was getting his first taste of what the game really was about. This early introduction to violence would shape his entire worldview and put him on a collision course with destiny that would eventually involve hip-hop's biggest star. The Southside Compton Crips emerged around 1971 to 72, initially called US Boys, before becoming Crips. For young cats like Keef D, the decision to get down wasn't really a choice. It was about survival and belonging.
What made me want to join the gang?
Yeah.
It was just we was all like a family. We stuck together, stuff like that. You know, and I was from that neighborhood, so I might as well ride with that. You know?
This family mentality was crucial to understanding how the checking-in system would later develop. The drug game transformed these neighborhood crews into major players with serious paper and serious influence.
Well, the baseball coach, he was buying weed, you know, from me, stuff like that. So one day I went up there, and he just he brought the ounce of weed from me for $60. From then on, shit, that's when I came in the drug game.
As Keef D's operation expanded, so did his power and territorial control. Eventually, he established a Colombian connection who gave him 148 kilos on consignment, charging $11,000 for each one. This wasn't small-time hustling anymore. This was major league trafficking that put Keef D in the same category as the kingpins who were reshaping urban America. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, a young revolutionary was developing his own relationship with the streets, but from a completely different angle.
But at this level, all we're trying to do is unite. And right now, as a year, we got 1 million people that's listening. Now we can tell them something. Now we can try to get them that way, and we might lose some. We might gain some, but we would never even have that audience had we not said what was real.
Tupac Shakur wasn't born in the streets like Keef D, but he understood the struggle better than most cats who grew up in the game. Tupac's gang affiliations were more performative and label-driven than authentic, starting as a peacemaker, but evolving into a Bloods proxy via Suge Knight. This put him at odds with Crip sets like the the Southside Compton Crips that would eventually claim his life. The rise of NWA and Compton's emergence as a hip-hop mecca brought unprecedented attention to the very streets that Keef D was controlling. Starting with Eazy-E, Compton became a hip-hop mecca, bringing national attention and serious money to a community that had been written off by mainstream America.
Back in like 82, about 81, 82, we used to cook at his mama's house.
At Eazy's house.
Yeah, cook up the big shit. This is before I went to the prison. We used to cook up, and he used to be in the back room playing that shit.
Eazy-E was a Kelly Park Crip, and all the Crip sets in the area were cool with each other. But the emergence of Death Row Records and Suge Knight represented a new type of power dynamic that would fundamentally change the relationship between street politics and the entertainment industry. Suge Knight had connections to the Mob Peru Bloods, and unlike traditional record executives, he was bringing real street credibility and street consequences into the boardroom. Keef D's relationship with Suge Knight went back to childhood football games in Compton.
He played football with us. He was a good kid. Daddy and him had some money, trucking companies, Benzos, fucking nice vans and all that shit, nice ass vans. Suge, Daddy and them, they had money.
This personal history would make what happened later even more tragic. These weren't strangers engaging in abstract territorial warfare. They were former friends whose paths had diverged in ways that would eventually put them in mortal conflict. When Tupac got out of prison and signed with Death Row in 1995, he was stepping into a world where street politics and entertainment industry politics were becoming dangerously intertwined. His association with Death Row automatically aligned him with blood-affiliated territories, putting him at odds with Crip-controlled areas like Compton. The checking-in system was about to be tested in ways that nobody could have predicted. When hip-hop money started flowing into gang territories, it created new forms of tribute and protection that went far beyond traditional street politics. Artists were finding themselves caught between their desire for authentic street credibility and the deadly serious realities of gang territorial control. The chain that started a war. The summer of 1996 was already heated with East Coast-West Coast tensions running high. But what nobody expected was how a simple chain snatching at a shopping mall would become the match that lit the fuse on one of hip-hop's most tragic explosions. This wasn't just about jewelry. In the streets, it's never just about the material. It's about respect, territory, and the understanding that some lines can't be crossed without consequences. The incident that would eventually lead to Tupac's death started with Orlando, Baby Lane Anderson, Keef D's nephew, and a young soldier in the Southside Compton Crips. But before we get into what really went down, you gotta understand who this cat really was. When he was asked about Orlando, Keef D responded by saying,
he was a good person, very good person, good heart, everything. He was really a kid.
This wasn't some hardened criminal looking for trouble. This was a young dude who got caught up in circumstances that spiraled way beyond what anybody could have predicted. But in the game, good intentions don't mean nothing when territory and respect are on the line. The Lakewood Mall incident that started everything wasn't how most people think it went down. According to Keef D, the whole narrative about who started what needed to be flipped. Here's what really happened.
One of my little homeboys, he was a football player getting ready to go to college. He was at the Lakewood Mall at the World Foot Locker. He was up there waiting, you know what I'm saying, by himself. When the homies came in there, they see my little homie see him, so he tried to sock Trayvon and snatch the chains.
A young college-bound football player from the Southside Crips was minding his own business at the mall when 3 Death Row affiliates started pressing him. When his homeboys saw what was going down, they stepped in and handled their business. Now the chain itself wasn't worth much money-wise.
That shit was like $300-$400 change. It wasn't no, they said they had a bounty on it, nothing like that.
But in the streets, it ain't about the dollar amount. It's about what that chain represented and the disrespect that came with taking it. The mythology around Death Row chains had been building for months. There were rumors circulating that there was a $10,000 bounty on Death Row chains, and whether this was true or not, the perception was out there. Some people even claimed that Puffy wanted Death Row chains for a music video, but Keef D wasn't buying the conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, Tupac was ascending to the throne as the undisputed king of revolutionary rap. His voice was reaching millions, spreading messages of empowerment and resistance that resonated from the projects to the suburbs.
That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. If I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here.
Pac's transformation from a young artist into a revolutionary voice was complete. He wasn't just rapping, he was preaching, teaching, and fighting for his people. But this same passion and refusal to back down would soon put him on a collision course with forces that didn't care about his message or his mission. The East Coast-West Coast beef was escalating beyond music into real street politics. The Source Awards incident, where Suge Knight made his comments about artists who didn't want people in their videos, really started setting off the hostility. When Tupac dropped Hit 'Em Up, he took the beef to a level that went far beyond typical rap rivalries.
Yeah. I felt the motherfucker, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he like, and whoever fuck with y'all? Like, damn, is he talking about me?
The comprehensive nature of Pac's diss, which targeted not just Biggie and Puffy, but their entire crew, represented an escalation that crossed from musical competition into personal and territorial disrespect. As tensions escalated, East Coast figures operating in West Coast territory had to navigate the checking-in system more carefully.
So he called one night man Zip. I don't know whether they had set this up or not, but Zipper came pick me up. We rolling up Greenleaf in our neighborhood, and his phone ring. Boom, and it was Puff. And he like, you think it's cool to come out here and do concerts? But I see he was trying to play us against each other. Crips, Bloods, you know what I'm saying? Sugar, Blood, we the Crips. So I guess that was his protection thing going.
This conversation reveals how Puffy was trying to navigate the dangerous waters of West Coast gang politics. By reaching out to Crip affiliates for protection against blood-affiliated death row, he was essentially playing both sides, a strategy that could provide security, but also create new forms of obligation and expectation. The fear was real.
But this how scared he was. He even had some Navy SEALs in the next room.
Yeah.
Like, damn. You just fucking scared of this dude?
The rumored $1 million bounty conversation would become one of the most controversial aspects of this story. According to law enforcement sources and Keef D's later confessions, there were conversations about substantial payments for violence against death row figures, though the exact details remained disputed and unproven. By the summer of 1996, multiple forces were converging in ways that made violence almost inevitable. Personal grievances, territorial politics, industry rivalries, and individual egos were all colliding in an environment where respect was everything and disrespect could be fatal. The Lakewood Mall incident was about to become the catalyst that would trigger a chain reaction leading to tragedy. Orlando Anderson, identified as one of the Southside Crips involved in the chain snatching, would soon find himself face to face with Tupac Shakur in Las Vegas. September 7th, the night they silenced the revolution. Vegas has always been a city where everything can change in an instant, where fortunes are made and lost on the turn of a card. But on September 7th, 1996, the biggest gamble wasn't happening at any casino. It was playing out on the streets, where Tupac Shakur was about to pay the ultimate price for not understanding that in the game of territorial politics, the house always wins. The Mike Tyson fight brought all the major players to Sin City. Entertainment executives, street legends, athletes, and celebrities were converging for what was supposed to be a night of spectacle and celebration. But when you mix that many egos and territorial allegiances in one place, especially with all the tension that had been building, something was bound to explode. For Tupac, this was supposed to be another victory lap. He was at the peak of his powers, the undisputed king of revolutionary rap, living like the superstar he had become. Tupac arrived in Las Vegas with his fiancée, Kidada Jones, death row head Suge Knight, and an entourage including bodyguards and Outlaws members. They checked into the Luxor Hotel, and everything seemed routine for a major celebrity appearance. For Keef D and his crew, Vegas had been their playground long before rappers started showing up for big events.
Yeah, before the rappers.
Before the rappers.
All that, yeah, before Suge even had his record company. He was going to the fights.
Okay.
Yeah. And Puff, before they had their record company. Like 88, 89 really, yeah. Started going to fights like 89.
This established presence gave them a sense of territorial ownership that would prove crucial to understanding their mindset that night. From their perspective, they weren't visitors in Vegas. They were regulars who had been coming to these events for years, long before hip-hop stars made it fashionable. The boxing match itself was over almost before it started, with Mike Tyson knocking out Bruce Seldon in the first round in under 2 minutes, which meant all the high-profile attendees were soon milling around the MGM Grand Lobby instead of being locked into their seats for a full fight.
So, yeah. And I said before the fight, I said meet at the cafe that was inside the MGM.
Okay.
So as the fight got over, we sent all of us that came to the MGM. So some of my partners from East Coast 11-8 came in there and said, hey, they just jumped on nephew. I'm like, who?
Orlando.
They said they just jumped on nephews.
The news that Orlando Anderson had been jumped hit Keef D's crew like a thunderbolt. In the streets, when family gets touched, especially by outsiders, there's only one response that maintains respect and credibility. The fact that this happened in what they considered their territory made it even more serious. The confrontation itself had been building since the Lakewood Mall incident months earlier. When Trayvon Trey Lane spotted Orlando Anderson in the MGM Grand Lobby, he identified him to Tupac as one of the individuals involved in the chain snatching. For Pac, this wasn't just about a chain. This was about respect and the principle that you don't let people take from your crew without consequences. The assault on Orlando Anderson was captured on MGM Grand surveillance cameras, showing Tupac, Suge Knight, and their entourage surrounding and beating the young Crip in the hotel lobby. For most people watching, this might have looked like celebrity ego run amok, but for anyone who understood street politics, this was an act of war. Orlando's reaction to the beating would prove crucial in determining what happened next. He just said he wanted a head up, a one-on-one fight with Tupac rather than group retaliation. This suggests the Southside Crips were initially seeking a resolution that followed traditional street protocols rather than escalating to lethal violence. But the events that followed would demonstrate how quickly situations could spiral beyond anyone's control when multiple factors converge: gang politics, wounded pride, available weapons, and opportunity. Eric Von Zip Martin's presence in Las Vegas and his provision of firearms would prove to be the catalyst that transformed a street dispute into a deadly confrontation. The Southside Crips initially tried to handle the situation through proper channels. They attempted to contact Suge Knight to arrange a meeting and resolve the dispute peacefully.
Yeah, we was, I felt we was on that type of level where we can just get this shit squashed, get a head up, and stuff like that with Lane and Tupac.
The Southside Crips went to Club 662, Suge Knight's venue, attempting to make contact and resolve the situation through proper street protocols.
So we was there for about 30, 40 minutes in the back parking lot.
Mob James, who was running Club 662 at the time, later confirmed seeing the Southside Crips in the parking lot and alerting death row security, but no contact was made, and the opportunity for peaceful resolution slipped away. The failure to make contact meant that the dispute remained unresolved as both parties moved through Las Vegas that night. This breakdown in communication channels represents a critical failure of the checking-in system. When normal diplomatic protocols couldn't function, the situation defaulted to street justice. The fatal confrontation finally occurred at approximately 11:15 p.m. at the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Koval Lane.
We was coming to Flamingo and got to the light. We was gonna go drink and smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He was hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Tupac.
Yeah, he was.
What happened next would silence one of the most powerful voices in hip-hop history.
It looked like he was reaching, yeah. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
The perception that Tupac was reaching for a weapon became the final trigger for the violence that followed. Whether this perception was accurate or mistaken, it represented the moment when the situation moved beyond any possibility of peaceful resolution. Tupac was shot 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh, while Suge Knight was grazed by shrapnel. The use of a .40 caliber Glock and the number of rounds fired indicated this wasn't a warning or intimidation. It was intended to kill the king of revolutionary rap. The immediate aftermath saw both vehicles attempting to flee, with death row associates firing back at the Southside Crips vehicle. This exchange of gunfire demonstrated that both sides were armed and prepared for violence, despite their stated preferences for peaceful resolution. Despite the deadly violence, there was no celebration among the Southside Crips, just recognition that a line had been crossed that could never be uncrossed. They had silenced one of hip-hop's greatest voices, but there was no victory in it. The shooting triggered a brief gang war in Compton between the Southside Crips and death row affiliated Bloods, resulting in multiple casualties. This escalation showed how conflicts between celebrities and their entourages could quickly spill over into the broader community. The immediate retaliation came swift. Reggie Wright Sr., captain of the Compton Police, threatened Keef D the day after the shooting, saying, "Keep it here. You kill my son. Motherfucker is on." The corruption of local law enforcement and their alignment with death row records created additional complications for any investigation. 6 days after the shooting, on September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died at University Medical Center in Las Vegas. Hip-hop had lost its most revolutionary voice, and the streets had claimed another victim of the checking-in system gone wrong. 6 months later, the notorious Beg was killed in Los Angeles, with many believing it was retaliation for Tupac's death, and the human cost continued to mount. Orlando Anderson was killed in 1998 in an unrelated gang shooting.
I was in jail, that hurt it, man. Deep down inside, it was the closest thing to me, man. That hurt it real bad. Hurt it real bad. My grandmother too. She's like a mom to us because my mom's died when we was younger. Yeah. That was devastating.
The same day Orlando was killed, Keef D's grandmother also passed away, creating a devastating double loss for the family. The violence that began on September 7th, 1996, continued to claim lives and destroy families for years afterward. For nearly 3 decades, Tupac's murder remained officially unsolved. But in 2008 to 2009, federal authorities finally got their breakthrough when they arrested Keef D on drug charges and offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. Keef D eventually confessed to his role in Tupac's murder during police interviews under a proffer agreement.
Yeah, proffer. Oh yeah. And they offered me a deal. Yeah, that deal. And I didn't know they was gonna have a tape recording, and they said there was no tape recording.
Right. Well, I interviewed Greg Kading about it. He said that he had a hidden tape recorder.
The confession that would eventually lead to justice was secretly recorded, providing prosecutors with the evidence they needed. But some people considered Keef D a snitch, and he had a lot to say to them.
They can either dig up, and I don't care. If they got a problem with me, bring it. You know what I'm saying?
Have you ever had anyone ever approach you over that?
Never.
Never.
Never. Never.
Do you feel?
I felt fucked up for a long ass time because that wasn't me. And ultimately, I saved myself. I ain't gonna say everybody else, I saved my fucking self.
Finally, on September 29, 2023, nearly 27 years after Tupac's death, Keef D was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in connection with the shooting. Justice was finally being served for the king of revolutionary rap. The checking-in system that was supposed to prevent such tragedies had instead created the conditions for one of hip-hop's greatest losses.
We need to come together as blacks, stand together, build a foundation and stop gangbanging against each other, stop destroying each other's life, you know what I'm saying, and uplift each other.
The tragedy of September 7, 1996 wasn't just the loss of Tupac Shakur, it was the demonstration of how a system designed to maintain order had become the mechanism through which violence was perpetrated. The checking-in protocols that were supposed to protect artists had instead created the conditions for confrontation, escalation, and murder. In the end, the day the Southside Crips tried to force Tupac to check in became the day that exposed the fundamental contradictions and deadly consequences of regulating celebrity culture through street politics. The collision between fame and territory, artistic expression and gang loyalty, revolutionary messages and territorial obligations produced a tragedy that continues to reverberate through hip-hop culture. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.